Welcome to Speaking of Schaumburg. I'm Village President Al Larson. In this episode, we'll be joined by Richard Bascom from the Schaumburg Transportation Department. Then we'll talk to Todd Winger to learn about the Schweikher House. We'll close out the program by speaking with commissioners from one of our sister cities, Namurikawa, Japan. All of this and more today here on Speaking of Schaumburg. There's a wide variety of transportation options available here in the village of Schaumburg, from buses and trains to bike routes, trolleys, and even aviation. Here to tell us more about this is Richard Bascom, Schaumburg Transportation Manager. Welcome to Speaking of Schaumburg.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Now, what does a transportation planner do besides?
I'll say all of it, but I mean, Schaumburg has so many different transportation options. We have mass transit that most communities don't have. We also have an award-winning, nationally recognized bicycle program that a lot of communities don't have either. We have our own airport, and of course, we have a lot of roadways. So there are a lot of roadway projects that we're involved with, and there's a lot of activity currently with the Jane Addams and even the Elgin O'Hare projects.
What kind of things are being involved in as far as that redevelopment is concerned, or that development is concerned?
Well, with Jane Addams, we're getting, of course, the tollway's being widened to 4 lanes in each direction. They're also getting a super wide shoulder so that we can have bus on shoulders that Pace Bus currently provides on the Stevenson. That's coming to the Jane Addams as well.
How well is that working down
600. There? It's working beautifully, and the ridership keeps increasing, and it's successful, and operationally it works perfectly.
What kind of interaction do you have with let's say, Pace, as an example?
Well, the village is very active. I was just actually elected chairman of Pace's ADA committee, so we're active in that sense. Pace has 7 full-time bus routes that operate within Schaumburg, and also a special event service through our Northwest Transportation Center, and certainly we're involved with dialogue with Pace on whatever events are happening with any of those routes. And then Pace also helps us fund our dial ride service, and they provide the trolleys for our trolley service. So there's a lot of partnership and interaction and coordination with Pace.
Now there's a great story here about a bus route that was going to be canceled, and Schaumburg Hanover Park and Hoffman stepped up and
absolutely
rescued it. Tell me about that.
It's Route 554, and way back in my early tenure in 2000, the route just wasn't generating ridership. So Pace had the public hearings, and they were going to have to cancel it. But Village of Schaumburg stepped up, as did Hoffman Estates and Streamwood, and at the time Elgin.
Hanover Park.
Hanover Park came on board literally about 5 years after when Elgin dropped out, and the route was changed to stop at Hanover Park's metro station. So there were some route changes, and St. Alexius and Hoffman Estates was added, and ridership just soared from basically 20,000 up to over 155,000 in the last 12 months.
That's quite a success story. I mean, especially for those people who claim that nobody's going to ever want to ride a bus. But that serves a certain need, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and I think it shows that when you design and develop a service that's convenient and optimal and operates in the hours that people are looking for, to the destinations people are trying to get to, they will use it, and by choice, and they'll use it. You know, we get choice riders. Now,
once those intersection or tollway projects get completed, what kind of increase in transit can we see in that corridor along the Jane Addams?
Well, I think right to start with, Pace has received funding for their Route 600, which is an express route that operates from Rosemont to Schaumburg. And I think we're going to see increased frequency, and certainly they'll be using the bus on shoulder aspect of the redesigned tollway to be able to get out to this area more quickly and bypass any of the traffic jams that really occur along the way. So that'll give people a quick and convenient and fast method to get out here without having to drive. Plus, the vehicles they use are very comfortable, and they're great. They're equipped with the Wi-Fi, so you have every convenience using the bus, and it'll be a great service to anyone coming out here to work or going even in the opposite direction. They're bi-directional.
Tell me about the dial ride program.
That is really Schaumburg's signature service. It began back in 1979. probably, I think, over the 36 years, we're getting close to our 3 millionth rider. We do about an average of between 60 and 70,000 rides per year, and it's called a demand responsive service, which means that the routes are not predetermined, so the routes really are designed by the calls that are received each day, depending on where people are trying to come from and go to. So it's very convenient. It's door-to-door service, and it's $2 a ride, full fare, $1 reduced fare, and it's convenient.
Now, what about the trolley system that Schaumburg has? That's become somewhat of an iconic thing as far as Schaumburg is concerned.
It really has, and I think the trolley is just, again, another signature service for the community. It's used by residents and visitors alike, and you can tell by the destinations it serves, which include the convention center, which is our second busiest stop. So we're attracting a lot of out-of-town riders. I think it's an amenity service that people have come to expect when they go to a convention area in a town, and Schaumburg offers that. But it's also really convenient and handy for our residents. Whitfield is so popular that parking, especially around peak times, can be a challenge, and the trolley gives you the option to go really door-to-door to the major destinations in the area.
Now that's also been used as a way of luring conventions to Schaumburg too, isn't it?
It has. The Meet Chicago Northwest has certainly information on the trolley and its promotional materials, and I think when they speak to the different groups who are coming to the area, it's just one of the amenities that these groups are looking for, and Schaumburg has it to offer. So I think that gives Schaumburg a heads up in competition over other areas that don't offer that kind of option.
And what kind of ridership does a trolley generate typically?
It's growing now. We're adding daily service for the holiday season. Starting last year, we also added daily summer service, and we're approaching 30,000 rides a year, which, for a majority of the year, it's a weekend service only. So it's not out there every day. So, but 30,000 riders is a strong figure, and it's growing.
Now, for those people in Schaumburg, some of whom don't have access to access to cars, that dollar ride is quite a unique feature, isn't it? It really.
Oh, it certainly is, and I mean it will get you anywhere within Schaumburg or Harper College and Palatine, and it gives people options. A lot of people use it for work trips. We have a lot of seniors who use it who can't drive anymore, aren't comfortable driving. Disabled residents. It gives access opportunities to everyone to work, shopping, recreation, education, any kind of destination.
Tell me about aviation. Now that's part of the transportation umbrella too, isn't it?
It is. Schaumburg Regional Airport was built in 1959, and the Village of Schaumburg acquired it in 1994. We made improvements to the runway in 95. We lengthened it to 3,800 feet long by 100 feet wide. We rebuilt the terminal building in 1998, and it generates generally roughly $19 million in economic impact throughout the community. We have about 75, 80 tenants out there who have a whole mix of services that they offer, from flight training to a lot of the helicopters that the networks used for traffic
Yeah, they have all the major broadcasters have.
We do. And their helicopters are based in Schaumburg.
Based in Schaumburg, yes. That's kind of a unique feature.
I think it is.
Now, what about biking in Schaumburg? We have a comprehensive bikeway system, don't we?
We do. We are a League of American Bicyclists, bicycle-friendly community. We achieved that in 1999, and we've maintained that designation throughout. Schaumburg has roughly about 90 miles of bicycle network. About half of that is on-street bike lanes. About half of that is off-street bike paths. And we're continuing to try and make that grow. We're doing a couple of what's titled Phase 1 environmental studies right now for bicycle path, future path along Martingale Road, for a segment along Higgins Road connecting with a Hoffman Estates path. And we're also now on the steering committee for the Elgin O'Hare Western Axis Bike and Ped Committee, which is looking at bicycle and pedestrian connections throughout that whole.
So there's going to be a mass transit option available on the Jane Addams. So we're talking about some kind of transit service regarding Elgin O'Hare?
Well, right now, for the Elgin O'Hare, I'm not aware of that option in the final planning stages, or if anything, is very preliminary. With Jane Addams, certainly Pace's Route 600 is already going to be that option, and they are building the wider shoulders to accommodate the bus on shoulder, which if it progresses to different levels of transit in the coming years, can be there will be the room to convert that to
rail.
Well,
maybe resurrect the star.
Anything.
Maybe resurrect the Star Line one more time.
Potentially.
Well, thank you, Richard.
Absolutely.
Appreciate all your input and the work that you do. The Schweikher Home and Studio is a masterful integration of brick, glass, and wood. It's the only structure in Schaumburg in the National Register of Historic Places. Learn more about the Schweikher House next here on Speaking of Schaumburg. The Schweikher-Langsdorff Home and Studio was built by architect Paul Schweikher. His architectural style, considered unique for its time. Executive Director Todd Winger is here to tell us more about this historical feature. Where was he in terms of Frank Lloyd Wright, who has this great reputation?
Right. So in the Chicagoland area, obviously Frank Lloyd Wright, internationally known. So Frank Lloyd Wright's going to be a little bit older than Paul Schweikher. Paul Schweiker's coming up through the David Adler group, and he's working as an apprentice under David Adler, a few years behind and after Frank Lloyd Wright has already left the Adler studios and moved on. But they were contemporaries, and they both borrowed from each other, and you can see that in a lot of their designs. A lot of early modernism structures and a lot of clean, flat lines on their buildings. So
where is this building located?
So the Schweikher House is in Schaumburg. Obviously, it's at the southern edge, south on Meacham Road, just south of the Water Reclamation District, the Egan plant, and the driving range there, the Fox Links.
And how did it come into Schaumburg? How did we step in to preserve it?
That's a great story. So in the 80s, the house was eminent domained by the Water Reclamation District, and the current owners, the Langsdorffs, were served with papers a few weeks before Christmas in 1988 and told that they needed the home for future expansion of the Water Reclamation District and sewage treatment facilities. Through a court order, they were allowed to live there as long as their life allowed. It couldn't be passed on to their children. During that tenure of 10 years, there's a number of things that needed to be replaced at the house, and after this period of time, MWRD had kind of reached their limit with historic structures and decided that they no longer needed that property to expand their base, and had approached the village of Schaumburg and asked if that's something that we would be interested in. And of course the village was very interested in preserving this historic structure.
Wasn't Martell's, Mrs. Langsdorff, wasn't she kind of instrumental too in
she was, yeah, Martell
asking the village
Langsdorff
to step in? And
Yeah, very much so. She approached yourself, along with some of her friends as well, and asked about if the village would be interested in maintaining this historic structure and trying to preserve it for future generations, that it was really significant, and that we should really recognize it.
How significant is it? I mean, what you said? You mentioned postmodern. I don't know what postmodern is.
Sure, that's a great question. We have. Within the realm of modernism, which is this sort of adaptation that's growing out of an era where they're looking to provide for the residents and for their buildings something that is unique, that it contains a lot of built-in features. It has elements that are proportionally symmetrical and have a resonance with them.
Give some examples.
So if you were looking at modernist architecture, you would look to people like Mies van der Rohe, who was a friend actually of Paul Schweikher's and was out to the house many times. So you would look at houses like the Farnsworth House down in Plano, the Glass House of Philip Johnson, some of those types of houses. Certainly Frank Lloyd Wright was considered on the edge of modernism as well. And a lot of his homes have a lot of those types of modernist features.
What specific is unique about the Schweikher building?
Probably the most well-known feature of the Schweikher House is the fact that it has this tremendous solar technology, solar gain that's built into it. So passive solar technology was something that Schweikher was an early pioneer of. In fact, in many books, he was considered to be one of the fathers of passive solar technology. He works with the Keck brothers, George Keck, on the House of Tomorrow at the 1933 Chicago Exposition. One of their houses featured this passive solar technology. In fact, it was moved to Beverly Shores, Michigan, as one of the houses that's there and is in some disrepair now. But he incorporated a lot of those ideas so that the solar gain coming in from the south-facing windows would heat up the house and allow for a reduction in the amount of heat that's needed to keep the house at a comfortable temperature. And the whole south-facing windows are great for that. It opens into a bedroom space and faces out onto a little Zen garden space, very Japanese influence.
Now, there's also a landscaping element to this too, isn't there?
Absolutely. Franz Lipp was a friend of Paul Schweikher's. Franz Lipp was landscape architect, I'm sorry, who did a lot of work in the Midwest. He worked on Cantini and other prominent buildings of the time, and was a friend of Paul Schweikher's as well. They worked on a couple of projects together, and so he had him over, and in Paul's oral history, he talks about having Franz over and them designing the property with landscaping.
Now, how does that look in the spring when those gardens begin to bloom?
Yeah, it's really quite beautiful. There's Franz Lipp designed a fruit tree alley that looks right out the back. So as you come up to the front door, there's cherry trees, a progression of apple trees, and then pear trees that are really nicely set off. There's also a wonderful peony garden, and the Redeker Gardens or Redeker Farms, who are old-time Schaumburg residents from way back. They had a peony farm, which became part of Spring Valley Nature Sanctuary. And there's a lot of very old and historic peonies that were brought over by Franz Lipp as the designer into this peony garden, over 35 different varieties that are in the garden.
How large a space do they have over there?
So when the village purchased the house and grounds from MWRD, we purchased the 2 acres proper, but there are 5 additional acres that surround it that are still held in an easement by the Water Reclamation District that have been turned over to natural meadow area. So total, there's 7 acres.
And it's got a lot of interest from architectural students and academics too. Don't you host a number of events over there?
We do, yeah. We've had well over 200 visitors over the last year. We've hosted half a dozen events out there. Folks from the American Institute of Architects, the Association of Licensed Architects. We have a lot of architects who are very interested in this building because of its very early modernist approach. 1937 it was started, finished in 38, so it was mid-century modern before it was mid-century.
So, and what kind of events do you have planned for this next season, as far as the grounds are concerned?
Yeah, we've got a great group of folks who we work with every year from Docomomo. It's a modernist organization. It's dedicated to the documentation and conservation of the modern movement. And we partner with the Chicago, the Midwest chapter, on their tour day every year. And so this will be our 4th year. We're going to, on Saturday, October 10th, that there will be a public tours available throughout the morning through 10, 11, 12, 1, and 2 p.m. that you can sign up for tours.
Now, if residents wanted to attend some of these events, what would they do? Who would they call, and what would they call?
They could call myself, Todd Wenger, and I could take their reservation at 847-923-3866, or they could look at our website, schweikherhouse.org, or they could visit the village website as well. There's a link to our website.
That's quite a responsibility you have to make certain that people get educated as to what the Schweikher House is all about and why it's important to preserve those kinds of things.
We certainly feel it's important. It's a cultural touchstone that is unique to Schaumburg. It's on the American Institute of Architects top 150 architectural sites in Illinois. It's a fragile site, and we feel it's important to pass on Schweikher's legacy, and that people understand his importance in the modernist movement and architecture in general.
Well, Todd, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Schaumburg currently partners with 4 cities around the world. The Sister Cities Commission helps build and maintain those partnerships. Learn more next here on Speaking of Schaumburg. Schaumburg Sister Cities Commission helps plan exchanges and partnerships with sister cities in Turkey, Germany, India, and Japan. Here to tell us more about Schaumburg's relationship with Numericao, Japan, are Commissioners John Caparelli and Madoka Wahlberg. Well, welcome to Speaking of Schaumburg.
Thank you.
Tell us what Sister Cities, why do we have a Sister Cities program in Schaumburg? Why is it important?
Well, first of all, I heard that in Schaumburg, there are more Japanese companies than in the whole state of Illinois.
That's correct, yes.
So many business. And I've been here for 19 years. And being originally from Japan and living in here, the States, I've been always interested in the relations between US and Japan. So about 6 years ago, I read in the village newsletter that there is a vacancy in Sister Cities, Japan. So I decided to apply. So since then, I've been in the commission. And nicest thing happened was 4 years ago. There was officials from Numericao, Japan, mayor, some officials and the city council came to visit, and we had a wonderful exchange, and you gave them a wonderful welcome, for which they are always grateful. So we had a very nice start, and I'm afraid I don't know too much about the relationship or what's going on before I became a commissioner. But I heard that Numericao Schaumburg relationship started in 1997, I believe.
That sounds about right.
So,
John, how about yourself? How did you get involved with Sister Cities?
Well, I'm somewhat of a newbie to the commission, but I belong to the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, and I realized the importance of cultural exchange, just being part of the Sons and Daughters of Italy, as to building bonds and what a small world we really have. I mean, right next door to me is a Japanese family, and I saw that a lot of Schaumburg has a presence of Japanese businesses and Japanese people, and I think cultural exchange is important in terms of getting to know each other's culture and how we can bridge the gap. So
yeah, that sounds about right. Really, you know, that's interesting, isn't it? How many members are in your
Japan
Sister Cities
subcommittee?
Sister City, yeah.
Okay, Japan subcommittee. We have 4.
right.
And also Germany, I believe, has also 4, and India has 4. I believe it's been equally assigned.
Do you plan on taking any trips to any of the sister cities at all?
Not at this time, however, next summer in August, some students, like junior high students from Numericao, is planning to make a visit. Mm-hmm. And they are thinking whether it's going to be culture or the sports. Since it's an early stage, we're not quite sure yet. But they are definitely coming. They expressed interest of visiting here.
How often do you meet?
Every 2 months.
Every 2 months, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Sister City is kind of broken up into you have Japan, and you've got Germany, and you've got India, and you've got Turkey.
Subcommittees.
Yeah,
And certain committees.
Certainly, I guess our ties with Numericao and Japan and a German exchange is probably more prevalent, let's say, than Turkey and
India.
And India.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
true.
But the population, of course, in Schaumburg, we have a large Indian population.
Correct.
I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I heard. Yes.
Ever growing, so.
Yes. So, what are your plans for the future as far as the commission is concerned? So you said they got some young people coming over?
Yes, actually, we just started planning for this youth, junior high, like ages between 13 and 15, coming next August.
Yes, in August.
So, and right now, just the beginning stage. So we don't know exactly whether they're going to have sports exchange or maybe cultural exchange, such as dancing or music.
How many do you anticipate?
Approximately 20 is what I'm hearing.
Oh, that's a good sized contingent.
Uh-huh.
Are you going to develop host families for some of these?
Yeah, we're
we
just start beginning to look for.
Would you be willing
families.
to take the visitors, John?
I'd have to talk it over with my wife.
No commitments here,
right?
right?
Right now, yeah. So
You're going to do what, John?
Maybe Italian cooking.
yeah, right. Well, exchange Japanese and Italian cooking. So.
Yeah. That'd be interesting, really. You know,
Yeah, right. We could learn from each other. So.
That's true. Are you a cook? You?
Yeah, I cook. Yes.
Okay. Well, then you could maybe have a kind of a chef's exchange between Schaumburg, Germany, and maybe Schaumburg, Illinois.
Yeah, there you go.
You know. Well, thanks for coming
time.
Well, thank you for having us.
to the interview, and look forward to the exchanges that you have with Germany or Americano or some of the two other countries. So this will do it for this episode of Speaking of Schaumburg. Join us next month for an all new episode. Until then, I'll see you around town.